Welcome into K-State Online. I'm Mason Voth. That is Drew Galloway here to talk transfer portal yet again for K-State. And that's because the Wildcats, after a slower start, only having one commit, now the steam is starting to pick up. Another addition to the portal haul for K-State. And we talk about how they're going to pull from all different levels. We've seen it happen before. Once again, K-State going to the FCS, not Division II. We'll talk about to get themselves a safety. And this comes in the form of MarQuavious Moss, who played at West Georgia last year, started his college career at Dodge City Community College, and played at West Georgia, who just bumped up to FCS this year, had been a D2 school. So a former Conch, then a Wolf, and now a Wildcat. MarQuavious Moss is coming in to try and really bolster the K-State secondary that needs some help with all the guys departing. What can you tell us about MarQuavious Moss?
Yeah, I think that it's a big addition because safety was a need that K-State has. Though he hadn't played well this season, Jordan Riley is departing and was a guy that played a lot of snaps. Marquise Siegel is graduating and is probably going to be drafted in the NFL, I would say still. Marquavious Moss is a guy that fills a big need. Probably is more of a jack safety, so he's probably more of a Jordan Riley replacement than a Marquise Siegel replacement because he was really good around the line of scrimmage this year at West Georgia. I mean, how often do you see a safety at any level that has 5 sacks on the season? So you can do a little bit of everything around the line of scrimmage. It's pretty good in coverage. Is really big, fits that jack safety mold, and is probably a guy that can come in and start day one at K-State. And it's just kind of a fun story because you talk all the time about where do you really get guys out of the portal. Well, sometimes you got to go to the D2 level. Sometimes you got to go to the FCS level. Sometimes you're getting G5. Sometimes you're getting Power 4 guys. I mean, Missouri, just a few days ago, got an MIAA defensive lineman to transfer to Missouri. So you kind of see the levels of college football really kind of coming together. And then K-State probably has the inside track on a lot of these schools in an underrated kind of way because I mean we know that K-State really recruits the junior college is hard. Junior college is hard, so I imagine that they made some calls to the Dodge City coaching staff about MarQuavious Moss and what does he provide, and do you think that he's a Power 4 kind of guy? Riley Galpin is the assistant director of on-campus recruiting at K-State. A lot of K-State people probably don't know that position A exists or B that she is in the role. She came from West Georgia, so they have a connection there with the West Georgia staff and can really get it in there. And then you see that, and I think that those kind of advantages really played into K-State because MarQuavious Moss had a long list of suitors. There was, I think, any team that needed a safety was looking at him, and he had a lot of visits scheduled, canceled a lot of visits, and then really trimmed his list down to K-State, Houston, and Tulane, along with Virginia. So you kind of see that, and you're like, okay, they had an end, really scouted well, did a lot of vetting, I would imagine, because of all the connections that they had, and now MarQuavious Moss ends up coming to K-State.
Yeah, so MarQuavious Moss, we kind of talked about this beforehand, and I was getting stuff ready, and I was like, On3 probably doesn't have a rating for him because he's an FCS bump up, especially one as fresh as West Georgia is. But you're like, oh no, he's got one, and then you dropped it on me. He's the 9th ranked safety in the transfer portal this year, and just to give some context to that, guys at the top that people are probably aware of, that certainly people around here have heard of. Genesis Smith from Arizona is the 2nd ranked safety. Kendall Daniels from Oklahoma State is the 4th ranked safety. But then you look around some of the other areas, the guys bumping up that are highly ranked. There are a lot of FCS guys or lower end D1, or not D1, but FBS. But the most notable thing to kind of paint this picture for everybody is Desan McCullough, who was, coming out of high school, a really well thought of recruit. And he comes in, he ends up going to Oklahoma, and after he was at Indiana, but he goes to Indiana, then ends up at Oklahoma. He was a 4-star. That's a guy that he's below Moss in the rankings. And then you look at Cole Wisniewski, who was the safety from North Dakota State that entered the portal. And I think a lot of people probably immediately thought, oh, North Dakota State safety. That seems like a K-State match made in heaven. He ended up committing to Texas Tech, but Moss ranked ahead of him. So this is one of those where you can find these guys at all levels. K-State's proven to do it in a nice way. And certainly Moss keeps bumping up a level each and every year. And that certainly isn't a bad sign to go from JUCO to FCS and now up to the FBS level with K-State.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to have the context of if you have like PTSD of Jordan Riley this season and how he played. Jordan Riley was ranked like the number 73 safety in the transfer portal. MarQuavious Moss is number 9. So a lot of people think that he has a lot of skills that really translate to the power forward level, has a lot more suitors. I mean, I can list off some of the teams that were involved with MarQuavious Moss that he ended up canceling or kind of just figuring out that, okay, I don't need to visit that school. Georgia Tech, Tulane, Virginia, Houston, Minnesota, Nebraska, just to name a few, were all involved pretty heavily for Moss. And because of that, I think that you really see how he was a wanted man. And those are important factors. We talked about it with Jaron Tibbs, that he was a pretty wanted man at the power forward level. So now you're seeing it with MarQuavious Moss, who had probably a longer list of suitors than that, but those are the ones that I just know about. So I think that it's a big deal. And again, this was kind of a one-off, but K-State has done really, really well in the transfer portal at defensive back, and especially the safety position. So I would imagine that they saw how the safeties played this season and wanted to really reevaluate how that they go about evaluating players and really wanted to get things right. And I think that you're seeing that with MarQuavious Moss and Gunnar Maldonado was another target. That's a safety that was originally at Arizona. And I think that those are two guys that you say, okay, they are probably better right now than we thought that Jordan Riley was last offseason.
Well, and so the other thing to look at here, there are 3 other Big 12 schools that have already picked up safety transfers and commitments. Mention Wisniewski, who goes to Texas Tech, just 1 year of eligibility there. That's the differentiator here, is that Moss is a guy that he's got 2 years available and a red shirt. I don't think the red shirt will be used, but it's there just as reference. And then Baylor added Devin Turner from Northwestern. He ends up working out to being, let's see if I can do some quick math, the 14th ranked safety in the portal. And then KU picked up Jaleel Hurley from Alabama. He's the 15th ranked safety in the portal. Missouri went down and they got the 20th ranked guy out of the portal at safety from Northern Illinois. So that is to put a little bit more context, even more so, into where K-State stacks up, where they got MarQuavious Moss. And again, it's not a for sure thing that this works out in some big way for them, but they are on the higher end of what the evaluators think of Moss's positioning in the transfer portal. So we'll see how it ends up working out for him. But this is a nice pickup for K-State, and this is kind of where they've lived to find success over the last handful of years, especially at the safety spot under Chris Kleiman.
Yeah, I think that is kind of the biggest takeaway of this commitment is that K-State has had a lot of success from the FCS level to the power forward level. I mean, there are people that will say that Josh Hayes was a Virginia transfer, but he barely played at Virginia because he was hurt. I consider him a North Dakota State transfer. Reggie Stubblefield was a Prairie View A&M transfer. Drake Cheatham was a Prairie View A&M transfer.
Marquise Siegel, North Dakota State.
Yeah, Marquise Siegel, North Dakota State. Easton Kilty was North Dakota. Like, you look at these FCS 2 power forward level guys, I think that everybody that I mentioned has been at least honorable mention all Big 12.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great point.
So you take that track record and you're like, okay, that MarQuavious Moss will probably be a very good player.
Yep, and that's what K-State will certainly hope for as they land another transfer portal commitment. If you want more on K-State and their portal involvement, go to On3, find KStateOnline.com, become a member if you're not, and get all the insight to just know exactly who is coming next. A lot of you probably read some tea leaves on KSO and realized that a video on MarQuavious Moss would be coming at some point this week. We just brought it to you. Now go on over to KSO and try and figure out who the next video in the transfer portal ends up being about. But that will do it for Drew and I today. We will be back again later this week with more on the Cats as K-State continues to get ready for a bowl game, but also build a roster for 2025.